Hello, everyone. Professor Kurzluck here. So, over the past year, a new phrase has started to show up across social media. This idea of China maxing. So, if you've seen it, it usually appears in short videos where people say things like, you met me at a very Chinese time in my life while showing Chinese food, maybe city scenes from China, fashion, maybe technology that the Chinese use. Sometimes it's playful, sometimes it's serious, oftentimes it's a mix of both. So for a while, this was just a social media thing. But this morning, the BBC ran an article talking about China maxing. It's been on more corporate mainstream media news over the past few days. So I just wanted to create a video kind of thinking about what the repercussions are for political science and what this means in a political science context. So, at first glance, this just looks like another internet trend. But from a political science perspective, it's actually a pretty interesting phenomenon because it tells us something about how younger generations are thinking about China, thinking about global power, and thinking about their own lives. So let's think for a minute about what does China maxing actually mean? The term comes from online slang where maxing means going all in on something. You may have heard other maxings like looks maxing or strength maxing. A younger audience probably has heard of these things more than, say, professors have, maybe with the media we consume, the way we consume news. So, probably to a younger audience, to students, this is something you've heard and you've encountered. But in this sense, people are saying they're leaning into Chinese culture, maybe Chinese aesthetics, or maybe Chinese lifestyle. I first started seeing this China maxing with Hassan Piker. I started seeing after his trip to China, he was talking about it, and then there was a news article, I think on Fox or one of those aligned uh, news sites talking about Hassan and his trip to China, and now he's back in the U.S. China maxing. So this idea, this term, these thoughts are starting to spread across more conventional media than, say, TikTok. So, what does this actually mean? So, China maxing might mean watching Chinese shows, maybe eating Chinese food, using Chinese apps, or other times expressing admiration for China's modern cities, for China's technology. So, most people are doing this, and they're not saying they want to live under China's political system. They're not endorsing the Chinese government. For many, it's more of just what people would consider a vibe, a way of saying they're drawn to certain aspects of China culture or the modern life, especially the big modern cities that China is building. You'll see videos saying, "Look at what they are building across the Chinese countryside." But here is where it becomes politically meaningful and kind of politically interesting. This trend is happening at a time when China is becoming one of the most powerful countries in the world, economically, technologically, and culturally. China plays a massive role in global trade. It produces much of the world's consumer goods. Its cities are some of the most technologically advanced on the planet. Its digital systems, mobile payments, delivery apps, social platforms, social media platforms, often feel more seamless than what many people experience in the United States or in Europe. So when young people when young people online start expressing fascination with China, it reflects an interesting, deeper trend. China isn't just a distant foreign country anymore. It's part of everyday global life. So, from a political science perspective, this connects to something that we call soft power. Soft power means influence that comes from attraction rather than force. It's not about military strength or economic power. It's about culture, lifestyle, and how appealing a country seems to outsiders. So, what's interesting about China maxing is that it's not being pushed directly by the Chinese government. It's kind of emerging organically online. People are responding to what they see: modern infrastructure, fast technology, vibrant cities, and a sense of momentum from China. So that matters because it shows how influence can spread without formal diplomacy. Another big issue of this trend, or another big thing to talk about, has to do with how younger generations feel about life in the West. So we know from polls, from focus groups, that many young Americans are frustrated about dealing with rising rent, student loans, expensive health care, living with party polarization, and a general sense that things aren't working as well as they should. We know trust in institutions is low. The future often seems quite uncertain. Meanwhile, they see videos of China's cities, efficient transit systems, cashless payments, and a booming nightlife. It creates a bit of a contrast. Even if those videos don't show the full reality, they present an image of energy and progress. So, for some people, China maxing becomes a way of expressing frustration with their own society, with their own economy. Almost like saying, look, things seem to be moving forward somewhere, even if they aren't here in their own lives. So this doesn't mean that China actually offers a better political system. It means people are reacting to what they perceive as momentum, as modernity, as an opportunity for a better life. So, on social media, people are constantly experimenting with how they present themselves, adopting aspects of Chinese culture. It may be playful, ironic, or sincere. It becomes a way to signal being global, open minded, or maybe even tuned in to new trends. So, in that sense, China maxing isn't just about China, it's about how people construct identity in a globalized digital world. And it's also worth remembering that online trends oftentimes exaggerate reality. Social media highlights the most visually impressive parts of life: skyscrapers, neon streets, fancy food, smooth technology. It rarely shows the censorship, the political repression, or everyday struggles that many people around the world have. That doesn't mean that the admiration is fake, but it does mean that it's certainly curated. And of course, there are criticisms of this trend. Some argue that it reduces Chinese culture to an aesthetic and ignores serious political issues like censorship or human rights. Others see it as cultural appropriation, and many point out that short videos don't show the full picture of life under a one party, non democratic system. So, those critiques are important. But Even with those concerns, the trend itself tells us something valuable. Young people don't experience international politics only through news headlines or government statements. They experience it through TikTok, food, fashion, and everyday digital life. So politics now flows through culture. So, what does China maxing really show us when we think of it through a political science spectrum? First, it shows that global power isn't just about armies or economies. It's also about images, lifestyles, and everyday experiences, what we oftentimes in political science think as soft power. Second, it shows that younger generations are comparing countries in new ways, often based on quality of life and technology rather than simply ideology, which may have once upon a time really driven these perceptions. And finally, it highlights how people use culture to express dissatisfaction, curiosity, and hope, even when they don't fully agree or maybe take into consideration a country's political system. So while China maxing might look like a simple joke online or a simple trend, it actually gives us a window into how globalization feels from the ground level, how ordinary people process rising powers, shifting futures, and their place in the world. And so that is why it's worth paying attention when we see articles like the BBC produced this morning about the emergence of China maxing. Okay, thank you.